Welcome back to the Panic Room, everyone, and to a very special tag video today. And yes, the tag owl is hiding his face, because today we're doing Juan's Faces of Horror tag. So guys, Juan made his own tag. How cool is that? So I am going to take a little bit of a different road with this tag, and that's actually because of a little conversation Juan and I had under his video, where he mentioned my little Library of Horror series. So for these prompts, I'm going to try to primarily answer them with kids' horror. Now, that's not going to be the case for all of them, simply because I couldn't find adequate books for a couple of these prompts. And I'm going to have some special mentions in case kids' horror isn't your thing. But I thought maybe that was a little bit of a different way to handle some of these prompts. Maybe give you guys some answers you haven't heard before. Without further ado, I've got Juan's video pulled up on my phone for the prompts, and prompt number 1. A horror story that scared or disturbed you. Alright, so we're taking it all the way back to the beginning. This is actually the book that inspired my little Library of Horror series, and it is On All Hallows Eve by Grace Chetwin. To tell you how far back this book goes for me, my mom read this to me. Now I want to read you guys just a little bit of this book, primarily because I want you to see how this book sets the scene and why it was so disturbing to me. Even now, I can see the disturbing nature of some of the scenes that this book sets. It is almost like a nightmare-scape. It's not an in-your-face slasher movie kind of horror, but I think you will see what I mean when I read you this passage about how it's almost like a nightmare that you're watching play out that you don't have any control over. And we've all been there, right? So to set the scene, one of our main girls, Meg, is actually being told of 3 visions that she has to have, and this is the vision of the future. 3 new figures appeared now, ones Meg had not seen back in the cavern. They were tall, taller even than the litter bearers, and stick thin. They looked to Meg like figures on Grand Jenkins tarot cards, or like mummies. Their entire bodies were cocooned in gray, except for the circles of their faces. Through a slit in their gray cocoons, their right fists protruded. They are the mummers, symbols of death, Graylin explained. You see the first one with the purple berries on its head? Now see what it carries in its right hand. That forked root is the root of the mandrake plant that some called the mandragora, and those are mandrake berries on its head. That mummer stands for forgetfulness. Now see, Meg Wilson, the second one passes by. See the vines on its head and the tangle of creepers in its hand? They are not really vines or creepers, but the limbs of the ceiba tree, the jungle tree that smothers ancient temples and monuments in your far eastern world. That mummer represents entombment. Now comes the third. Meg looked and recognized for herself what that one stood for. The figure's head sprouted a stinkhorn, which she had seen so often in her English woods. In its hand it bore a short wooden wand half eaten by the same. Decay, she said. It stands for decay. Not so much decay as the transition from one state to another, Graylin answered. Which surely amounted to the same thing, Meg thought, though it was a more positive way of putting it. What have they come for, she asked. Well, as you have guessed, we're looking ahead. Soon this will all happen in the deepest, darkest part of the wood. At the stroke of midnight, those 3 will touch your friend. And then will come Samana and touch him, and at that moment he will become one of her multitude. Now came the craven, moving its pinions up and down in a slow and deliberate way, clearing a path through the crowd all the way to the black slab. Meg fully expected the creature to hop up and perch beside Rip, but instead the craven squatted by the stone, careful not to touch it. Now came the stirring in the trees, while Meg could almost feel the icy wind fanning at her cheeks. But it was not Samana, not yet. It was that Spike, waving people aside with his dream stick, and 2 bears bringing Rip on the litter. In that instant, Samana whirled in a fury of impatience. The crowd fell back under her energy in her advance, and the space rapidly cleared around the slab. She circled the stone, defining her territory, defying anyone to overstep its boundaries. As one, the mass began to sway, towards Rip, then away, like the waves around a rock. Samana signaled to the Spike. He scuttled off somewhere, coming back at once with a twisted stick on which was mounted a yellow skull. That is the head of Golga, who was the witch queen before Samana, and so the evil goes on. Samana snatched the scepter and raised it for all to see. The mouths of the dead-alive folk opened in a silent shout. The Dark Queen then wheeled around the space, tantalizing the outstretched hands with the skull, while beneath her the mummers moved to the altar, waving their strange maces over his head. First the mandrake, then the ceiba, then the stinkhorn. Faster the witch queen whirled, and faster, until suddenly she turned and ran up to the slab, and even though she did not touch it, she raised the skull on high. No, Meg cried. So guys, you see what I'm saying? Like, imagine that. We're talking about a witch queen getting ready to throw an old skull into a kid's head and make him one of the undead. I mean, it's not your average Halloween book. So for prompt number 1 on All Hallows Eve. All right, so prompt number 2, a horror story that depressed you or made you cry. All right, guys, so I actually have 2 for this one. The first one is from Neil Gaiman's M is for Magic, and the story is called The Price. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to give you any spoilers. Suffice it to say, it is about a cat and what he does for his family. Oh my gosh, I got to the end of that story and almost just started blubbering like a baby. If you are a cat lover, hell, if you are a pet lover at all, you are just gonna like have your heart explode when you get to the end. It is such a good story. And short, how to be that powerful in such a short story is just amazing. But the second one I wanted to mention is The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. Now, have you guys ever read a story where like the hits just keep coming for your main character? That's this one. But as it goes on, you just keep thinking like, what more? What more could possibly happen to this guy? Like, come on. And there are some things that happen to this rabbit, because it's a rabbit, Edward is a rabbit, that I'm just like, oh my God, did that really just happen in a kid's book? No joke, this rabbit is talking about some deep stuff, like losing family members and loneliness, and it's like, what? I cannot imagine the effect that this would have on a kid, because I was seriously sitting in my office reading this like, holy shit, seriously? Something else? So yeah, very, very sad. One of the saddest kids' books that I think I've ever read. So 2 for this one. M is for Magic, the short story The Price, and The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. Prompt number 3, a horror story that made you laugh. Okay, so for this one, I actually have 2, and they're not kids' books, but the first one is The Children God Forgot. There's a scene about raining poop. It's a good book, it really is, but there are so many scenes where you're just like, what the hell is going on? So I've got to mention The Children God Forgot. But the second one I want to mention is one that Caleb actually suggested in his little answer under Juan's video, and it was John Dies at the End. So since Caleb picked that one, I'm going to pick This Book is Full of Spiders, which is the second in that series. Now, both of them are amazing. They really are. And I really think, I said in my little comment back to Caleb that they are criminally underread. They marry horror and humor so well. So well. And I actually have a little blurb that I'm going to read you just to give you a taste as to how humorous this book is, at least to me. Maybe I have a weird sense of humor, probably, but I think it's pretty damn funny. So, I approached and reluctantly peered into the driver's seat. Now it was my turn to stand there slack-jawed, breathing air that stank of leaking antifreeze. My first impression was that the driver's seat was empty, which wouldn't have been that odd. Maybe the driver was dazed and stumbled out before we arrived. But it wasn't empty. Sitting in the driver's seat was a 6-inch tall plastic G.I. Joe action figure. It was half obscured by a seatbelt, which was clasped around it. John and I stood there trying to puzzle through what we were seeing, the gears in our heads creaking against a thick vodka sludge. Not that it would have made sense in perfect sobriety either. The driver, crashed his truck into a tree, then before leaving the scene of the accident decided to position a toy in the driver's seat and buckle the seatbelt around it? Why? So the first responders would think that the Toy Story universe was real? That's the kind of shit you're dealing with. So, This Book is Full of Spiders, or John Dies at the End. Both amazing books. Alright, prompt number 4, a horror story that made you angry. Now, I can't really get angry at a kid's book. Come on. So we're going to go with the very first book that I ever reviewed on this channel, The Nirvana Effect. Now, why did I pick this one? Well, simply because I didn't really like the way that the 2 main characters ended up, but primarily it has to deal with forcing people to do things, which I'm usually not a fan of. I'm a big fan of going your own way and doing things because you want to be doing them. And that book really just at every turn was showing how detrimental it is to take choice away from someone, on a grand scale in that case. But it really fueled in me that whole idea that I have about how I think it's best practice to just leave people the hell alone, and if they're not harming themselves or harming others, let them do their own thing and stay the hell out of the way. So, The Nirvana Effect. Alright, prompt number 5, a horror story that is important to you. Alright guys, so I have 2 answers for this. One is a kid's book and one isn't. So let's start with the kid's book, because I really think a lot of you are going to agree with me on this one. I feel like a lot of you probably grew up with it too. And that is The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. It has just all of the nostalgia of Halloween within its pages, but I really think, you know I'm a Halloween lover, I know I'm talking to probably a bunch of Halloween lovers, but I really truly think that even if you have, just a passing love for fall or, any kind of like autumny, Halloweeny type deals, you would see the beauty in this. And it is very, very dark at parts. I mean, come on, we're kind of dealing with Halloween through the ages here. There's going to be some horrific shit happen. And it's a magical, magical journey, especially for a child, I feel like, who can suspend that disbelief. But even now, just the absolute beauty that this holds for all things fall, for all things Halloween, for tradition itself, I would even go out on a limb and say. It is just such an amazing book. It really is. All right, guys, so the second book is actually a classic. And while I don't read a ton of classics, I do respect them for what they are. And, there's a number of them that I actually really enjoy. But this one has stuck with me in a way that really very few of them have. And it is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I remember reading this thinking that it was just an absolutely horrific look into the mind of a man. This whole idea of changing yourself, that is horrific. Think about that for a second. You are taking who you are and trying to change it into something else. And you are seeing these terrible, horrible parts of yourself manifest. That is absolutely terrifying. Because, like it or not, we all have those parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily love, right? I'm a believer that we are capable of lots of things. We have this ability to show kindness and just wonderful love to each other. But in the same token, we also have the ability to be absolutely evil and terrible to each other. And, I think true maturity comes from understanding that that exists and then knowing that you have the choice between the two. And I just saw a lot of that in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, way back when I first read it. And it also speaks to me because that is really my favorite kind of horror. I love getting into my characters' heads, finding out what makes them tick, really hearing their thoughts and seeing them change and all of that. And so I really got so much of that out of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it was a very important book in a lot of ways to me. It kind of opened up the doors to other classics, and it even kind of showed me the direction that I like to go with my horror books. So, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. All right, so prompt number 6, a non-horror story that you consider horror. Okay, so we're back to the kids' books for this one. Because as I was looking through them, I came upon this one that I had talked about in a video ages ago. And it still blows me away that this is a kid's book, okay? So would anybody classify it as horror? Probably not. But, oh my God, the subject matter is just like I cannot believe, I cannot imagine reading this to a child. So to end this video, we're going to talk about what there is before there's anything there. I know, already with the title, we're getting creepy. This book is about a boy who, like a lot of children, has a nightmare because he sees things coming into his room at night after his parents put him to bed. So allow me to read you about the manifestation of this nightmare. He knows that they are coming. They come every night when the ceiling disappears. First comes one. It's not always the same one. It floats down from where the ceiling was, slowly, slowly. It stands at the end of the bed without making a single sound. It stares at him. It doesn't stop staring. It never says anything. And then come down more, lots more. They don't say anything. They just stare at him. He starts to feel scared because he knows what's coming next. It comes every night when the ceiling disappears. It's dark and shapeless, blacker than the blackest darkness. And it is the only one that speaks. In a very low voice, in a whisper, it says, "I am what there is before there is anything there." Now, guys, take a look at this. Remember, this is a children's book, okay? Yeah, look at this. This is a kid's book, guys. A kid's book, all right? Not a horror book, a kid's book, all right? And, yeah, it doesn't end there. So, kid gets scared, runs into his parents' bedroom. "Mommy, Daddy, can I sleep with you?" You know that trope, you know what I'm talking about. "Sure, honey, yeah, you gotta stop doing this. They're just bad dreams, whatever." Here's the last panel. Remember what he's talking about the things coming down from the ceiling? So there he is, sleeping with his mom and dad. Here comes the little thing down, and there it is, just staring at his ass. Again, a kid's book, guys. Literally, this is probably one of the most horrific ones that I think I've ever found, just because it's very cerebral. What there is before there is anything there. All right, guys, so that is it. I know this has probably been a way longer video than I intended, but I really hope that I kind of gave you guys some new and different types of answers. And Juan, thank you so much for tagging me. This is so cool. I'm so glad you made your own tag. So guys, if you like this, please hit like, hit subscribe. It would really help me out. And until next time, bye for now.